Welcome back, everyone. So, we're taking a look at the wrap up for this Saskia the Unyielding deck. I highly recommend you watch the gameplay video first. That will be linked in the description below, because I will be referencing the game a lot. Spoiler alert, turn back now if you don't want spoilers. So, kind of a crazy game, tons of removal. Saw the lands get blown up twice, not something you usually see. Usually they only get blown up once if they get blown up at all. Twice is a lot. So as far as my analysis and what to take away from this deck in this game, take everything with a grain of salt because that game was absolutely wild. But I think there's still some improvements we can make, discounting the craziness that was that game. And just to start with, I do like the deck. There's a lot of good cards in here. The mana curve looks pretty good. I like that we've still got a couple cards at 5 and 6. We've got a couple things at 7 and 8. I like what's going on up here a lot. This means that you still have some punch for later in the game, and you're not just completely relying on like 2, 3, and 4 drops to try to get the job done. So I definitely like that. But I think there's some choices we can make to like maybe give the deck a little bit more synergy. And I think that's all going to boil down to focus. And being that this is a 4-color deck, you have a lot of options. Like, there is more than one way to build this and more than one way to focus the deck. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight some of the major areas that I think you can focus the deck into. And then from there, you can choose which way you want to go with the deck because it is 4-color and because there are so many different ways that you can choose to go. Oh, the other thing too, I mentioned it in the game a little bit. I do want to see the creature count come up a little bit. It's at 25 right now. I think 30 would probably be a little bit better for this deck, and you could certainly go north of that. Whenever you have green, you can always go a little bit higher on your creature count than you normally would otherwise. But yeah, in the game, I was definitely feeling that the density of creatures was just a little bit lower than I wanted it to be. Anyway, give me a moment, and I'm going to start highlighting some of the different directions that we can focus the deck in. Okay, so I've made some piles of some stuff, and each of these represents a different way we can focus the deck. Let's start with this second pile right here. So some of the first things we see, and I might add 1 or 2 of these anyway, even if we don't go completely in this direction, but Taurine Mauler and Managorger Hydra are just really good at being these early game threats that get huge, and then someone has to spend removal on them. When you spend only 3 mana to get a creature that's probably going to get to like 8 power, that's a pretty low cost investment for something that someone has to remove or it will probably kill them. And these will definitely help a lot, giving you more of that early game aggro feeling that this deck is missing a little bit without having to commit a ton of stuff to the board. You're only playing a single creature. Referencing the game we just played, conceivably we could have played like a Managorger Hydra and then played our Phyrexian Arena and then just kind of, sat back for a while the Hydra got bigger, doing other things, trying to ramp more and stuff like that. So we have this threat that's in play, but it's not terribly expensive to cast. We can do it early, and you don't necessarily need to commit more things to it because your opponents will make it huge. We also see Forgotten Ancient. I would probably add this just because this thing makes everything in your deck threatening, and that's just a thing that's really attractive to me. It's a really good card. God of Turtle Ronas, kind of a finisher that plays up on this go tall style strategy. Now, of course, this works with a lot of different things, but this is just me kind of illustrating. Here's another way to make our things even bigger, and it's going to be a totally legit card. All of the God Eternals, by the way, are really good with Skull Clamp, so if you decide to add any of the God Eternals, I would probably add a Skull Clamp with them. We have Gahiji, gonna add a little bit more power to our creatures, gonna give our opponents incentive to kill each other, which I really like. Which also reminds me, I want to see Marisi in this deck, and this pile right here is the pile of things that I definitely want to add, and we'll talk about those in a minute, but I'm going to add Marisi to that pile before I forget to do it. And then we see, of course, if we're trying to go tall, we want to make sure we have tramples, so I just put a few ways to give things trample really easily. We've got Nylea, we've got Ronas Monument. Note that it doesn't matter what color creature you cast. Anytime you cast a creature, you can give something +2/+2 in trample until end of turn, just that the cost reduction only applies to green, so could be a solid inclusion if you wanted to go that way. Archetype of Aggression, very reasonable way to give trample and take away trample from your opponents. And then, of course, we see Galta, one of the best go-tall creatures in the game. It's huge, it has trample, and it has a bunch of cost reduction on it. So, if you want to go this go-tall route, these are certainly some things to do it. And, I may even try to adopt the Managorger Hydra and the Taurine Mauler anyway, just because they're going to give you more of that aggro feel that I think you're looking for. Next up, we see the Go Wide pile. So this is going to be all about tokens, trying to make lots of bodies. And if we go to the pile next to it, these are cards that are already in the deck that support this strategy. However, when I was playing the game, I did feel like these cards weren't supported because we weren't making tokens, we didn't really have enough creatures, so the focus felt a little bit thin for these particular cards. So if you're not wanting to go this route, I would probably cut some of these cards from the deck. Not the Gargaroth, because Gargaroth's insane, but these cards are going to work best if you're doing some sort of token thing, and you're really sure that you're going to have multiple bodies in play most of the time. But going back to this pile, so Loyal Apprentice, fantastic for token decks. Legion Warboss, Goblin Rabblemaster, same sort of thing. Been using these a lot in Winota, and they're just insane. They spit out bodies so unbelievably fast. So I definitely like that. There's tons of cards in green. You have Avenger of Zendikar at the top end. You've got Rampaging Balos at 6. Who's the 5-mana guy with City's Blessing? I can't think of the name of it right now. That would be really, really good in this slot as well. Hero of Bladehold is solid at making a bunch of tokens and also gives them power, does a lot of nice things. Grave Titan, just a really, really good card. So if you want to go on more of this go wide plan, these are some of the things that I might look at for that. And note that these will help support some of the cards that are already in your deck a lot better. So those are two things to think about, but there's some other things we can look at too. So in this pile is all about like ramp creatures, and one card that I would definitely add to the deck, I've got it in this other pile right now, but I'll slide it over here while we're talking about it, is Fabro Elder. Fabro Elder is fantastic. It's cheap. It plays offense, it plays defense, and it also makes you a bunch of mana, so I would absolutely add this. It kind of just does everything for this deck. But some other options you can look at, Neheb the Eternal, fantastic with doing damage. You can get yourself a bunch of red mana for your second main phase. And the big thing with this is that if you're running creatures like this, you can go a little bit bigger in your deck. You can probably add like a second or third 7-drop, and if you run a number of these type of cards, you can get to something bigger much quicker. And there's definitely something to say about that. If you can slam a big threat that sticks, you're probably going to be in a pretty good place. And the other thing to talk about too, Savage Ventmaw, also a cool card if you're planning to do more of this ramp style thing. Many of these cards combo with Aggravated Assault, so if you're looking to go a little bit more combo-y, and it can be good to have something like this. In the game we just played, if we could have assembled a 2-card combo like this, that would have been the most ideal thing, because the removal just kept on coming, and we were never really in a great position to be able to just like have a bunch of creatures and attack with them. And that's where having a combo can still give you the ability to win the game, even if you've been in a bad spot or you're super far behind someone else. So definitely something to look at, but Fabro I think is a must-add. For me personally, Neheb would be a must-add. I love Neheb. It's just one of my favorite cards. But there's still other things too. So another thing that you could do is you could focus on like a really removal-heavy creature base. So you could start using things like Noxious Gear Hulk, Reclamation Sage, Ravenous Chupacabra, Skyclave Apparition, Glorybringer, and Inferno Titan, and there's many more. But you could really focus on this like really controlling type of game plan where a lot of the creatures in your deck come into play and kill something, or when they attack they kill something. So this is going to be good for keeping your opponents in check. It's not necessarily going to win the game the quickest, but you can play a really controlling game while still having threats on the board yourself. And in general, this is a fairly powerful strategy because now you have a lot of creatures and you have a lot of removal. So not only do opponents not have things in play, they also have to deal with your creatures afterwards because your creatures are blowing up their stuff. So it puts more pressure on them to be able to respond to these things. And if you get like a high density of these type of creatures in the deck, life is going to be difficult for them. It's not saying they can't win, but they're going to have to jump through a lot more hoops to do it. So this is certainly one way you can focus as well. And then finally, we see this big pile over here. This is the like most Boros of all the strategies. This is going to be really focusing in on Double Strike. So Bruce Tarl is probably a card that I would also definitely add to this deck. Silverblade Paladin, going to be good if you want to do the Double Strike thing. Mirran Crusader. Snapdax, kind of a cool card, comes in, is a little bit of removal, could be in the removal pile as well. Going to give some Double Strike, which will be nice. Calamity could actually be really cool for this deck. We got Embercleave, gives Double Strike. Not a must. I know they're expensive, but just as an example of something that gives Double Strike nicely. Duelist Heritage is much cheaper than Embercleave, and I would probably run Duelist Heritage before Embercleave. At least in the sense of Duelist Heritage is way easier to get. Angel of Destiny, kind of the cool new one. Not that it has to go in the deck, but it is a cool creature with double strike that does a lot of things, so could be interesting. And of course, if you're doing the double strike thing, any number of swords start to make sense. Umezawa's Jit, Mask of Memory, all that stuff kind of comes into play if you want to be more on that side of things. So I think the key is pick one of these and really kind of focus in on what you want this deck to be. And this isn't everything either. Like, there's plenty of other like value creatures and just lots of other things that you could be doing as well. But these are just some of the things that come to mind for me when I started thinking about this deck. I'm like, okay, we can go tall, we can go wide, we can have a ton of removal creatures, or we can do like a really Borosy thing with double strike, which will be great for the Saskia triggers and also great with swords and things like that. And of course, you can kind of mix and match between these. The only one I wouldn't go super deep with is the go wide. Having like 1/1s and 2/2s is not the best when trying to get the damage in. They're generally good for blocking, but without additional support, tokens can be a little bit lackluster. So if you're going in on tokens, you're going to want to make sure you have a lot of support for tokens, things to pump them up. That's going to be your Adrianas, Elish Norns, Cathar's Crusades, stuff like that. Any sort of Anthem effect that will make them bigger. So anyway, these are a lot of the options, and you can certainly choose to do whatever you want. For the sake of this video, since I don't know exactly which direction you want to go, I'm just going to kind of mix and match and pick a few things from each category that I like. And this pile over here is the cards that I think are must-adds to the deck. We talked about Fabro Elder. It's just going to do everything. I think Marog is a really good add for this deck. It's going to give you additional power. It's going to give you additional combats. It is big itself. I think it's just everything you want in this deck. Marisi is going to be really good. Opponents not being able to cast spells during combat is huge. Means they can't fog, means they can't shoot your things in combat, and then it goads. And goading is also more of the things you want because now your opponents are forced to kill each other and means that they probably won't have blockers for the next turn when you want to attack. So I think Marisi is going to be super valuable. Tectonic Giant, 2 modes, damage or more cards. Choose the one you need right now. Really, really good. Sun Titan is recursion and just great value, so I would absolutely add a Sun Titan. Kunaros, a lot of abilities on there. Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Creature cards of graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from graveyards. This is a little bit of graveyard hate on top of some really good keywords. This brings a lot to the table for 3 mana. Orin Frostfang, this card is ridiculous. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. It's going to draw you a lot of cards. It does a lot of things. It's really good with Inferno Titan. I had 2 Inferno Titans in a game once and an Orin Frostfang, and then I won that game shortly after because I blew up all the blockers. 1 damage to each of them, and there were 6 blockers. I blew up 6 blockers. That was pretty good. Adriana, really good at pumping the team, so something I would probably look at as well. So anyway, those are some of the choices. I think these are some of the must-adds. But if I were going to try to like mix and match all this stuff, here's what I would do. I'm going to take these 3 creatures, move them into the add pile, and we'll see. Not all these are probably going to make it at the end, but, you know, we'll do the best we can here. Galta's going to be a maybe. Galta's just so good. We'll get rid of these. From the token pile, Grave Titan's the only one that, like, really jumps out at me, but I think I'm just going to skip past the tokens altogether and focus on more of, like, you know, this very combat-centric type deck. As far as the go-wide pile, we'll get rid of that, get rid of this, get rid of Hellrider. Beastmaster Ascension is really cool, but you do need to be able to have 7 counters on it, and for that reason, I'm just going to get rid of it. I think we can add another creature into that spot, too. We do need to get some additional creatures into the deck. I would add Neheb. I don't play a red deck without playing Neheb. It's just too good. Honestly, I think I would run Grand Warlord Radha, but you could also go for Savage Ventmaw. Making more mana is always going to be better, so, you know, take that for what it's worth. Move the Gargaroth back into the pile. As far as the double strike pile, I would add Bruce Tarl because of the lifelink. The lifelink is super valuable. I think I would add Snapdax for the multi-purpose removal. Double strike kind of does a little bit of everything. I think I would also add God Eternal Oketra because it's also spitting out 4/4s, which is pretty fantastic. And then the rest of this stuff I would probably get rid of. I'm going to get rid of this removal pile for now. We'll see what our removal looks like after. Maybe we bring some of these things back in. Maybe we don't. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of that. We'll get rid of these for now just to like try to get down to a reasonable deck size here. Okay, so we're definitely not going to be able to add every single thing that I want. Radha is a little bit less good than Neheb, so we'll get rid of Radha. Taurine Mauler is a little bit less good than Managorge or Hydra, but you could certainly add both if you're wanting more of that early game pressure on your opponents. Okay, let's take a look at creatures that are actually in the deck right now. Okay, I think I found all the creatures right here. As far as creatures that are in the deck currently that I would cut, this Loyal Subordinate is interesting. I saw it in a game a few weeks ago. With Saskia being as threatening as it is, I don't know if this is going to do exactly what you want because people are going to try to keep Saskia out of play because they don't want to die. But I get it. It's life loss to your opponents where you don't have to attack successfully, and that is pretty cool. However, it doesn't synergize with any of the damage doubling, so that's a thing to consider as well. Like, if you're able to just get in with a big creature, especially if it has double strike, then, that damage is going to compound itself a lot more than just the 3 from Loyal Subordinate. So, interesting decision tree to make on that one. Sower of Discord is really interesting. I haven't seen it enough to know if it exactly belongs in this deck. I would keep an eye on it. If it's doing good things for you, keep it. If not, you could always pull it out. I think I would actually cut Mangara. As good as Mangara is, it's really good for like mono white and Boros where you don't get to draw well. But with green and black has much better card draw options, and I think I would go about it that way because Mangara does have a bad habit of getting blown up before you get to draw a lot of cards, in my experience. So I'd probably go for something a little bit more reliable on the card draw. Miri is also an interesting one. I haven't seen Miri that much either since it's come out. And for that reason, I'd probably just cut it to get some of this other stuff into the deck that I know is just, like, good. But it does bring some utility in that opponents can't, like, run you over with a giant army, which, it's a thing. That is a thing, so I'm going to pull these 3 out. That brings us down to 34 creatures. That's definitely a solid creature count. I might try to bring down another creature or 2, just so we don't overdo it. And when I was thinking about it, the Tectonic Giant kind of just replaces Mangara, but has other things it can do too with, like, the damage mode and stuff. What I like about Tectonic Giant, you're in control of the Tectonic Giant, so like you could cast it, potentially give it haste, and use it right away. Mangara is always going to be at the discretion of your opponents, and that I don't care for as much. Okay, maybe we can live without Snapdax. It is really cool, and I would definitely consider it, but just for the sake of trying to get down to 100 cards here. Get rid of Snapdax. All right, I'm going to resort this by converted mana cost. We're going to get rid of this Aggravated Assault. If you want the combo, bring it in. Bring in some of the combo pieces. If you don't want the Aggravated Assault combo, then leave it out, obviously. Let's take a peek, see what we're looking at. So I've definitely added quite a bit to the 5 converted mana cost and 6 converted mana cost slots. So that's where we're going to focus some of our effort here to kind of pare things down a bit. Because we're not crazy combat focused, like we have a couple extra combats, I'm going to cut this Adriana just because 5 is pretty crowded. But if you ever have Aurelia or Mirag with Adriana, things will get silly. I'm going to cut this Galta. I really like Galta. Looking at the 6 CMC, I'm going to cut this Sower of Discord. You could absolutely keep it if it's doing work for you. It's just a little bit less proven to me. I haven't seen it as much as I've seen these other cards. I know all of these other cards are really good, so keep those. I think in the 5 CMC slot, you have a choice of cutting Sigarda or Sunscorch Regent. I'm going to cut Sunscorch Regent. I think in general, it's a little bit less good than Sigarda. Sigarda is a nice bit of protection, though I do really like what Sunscorch Regent does a lot. I might actually cut this Deadly Rollick. In my experience, Saskia does have some trouble staying in play. Because when Saskia is not in play, 4 is a bit. 4 is a bit. Let's get rid of Utter End, and I think I'm going to go for, like, a D-Spark instead. I know it's more restrictive, but the mana efficiency here really helps. Another thing that I wanted to cut, I don't think you have enough black mana in this deck to really support Necropotence. I know the lands got blown up twice, and we would have been able to get it pretty easily. It was maybe around turn 9 or so. Had the lands not gotten blown up, I think you can do better than Necro. Like with green, you have Rishkar's expertise and stuff like that, and that's both going to not drain your life, and 2, allow you to have your natural draw per turn, and 3, not cost triple black in a deck that doesn't, like, there aren't that many black cards in the deck, so, it also makes sense that your mana base isn't going to have a ton of black in it, so that's something to think about. I get it, it's a super powerful card, but I don't know it's exactly the thing you want for your card draw. We've added in Orin Frostfang for card draw. We use Tectonic Giant to replace Mangara. All right, I'm going to cut this Kunaros. I would strongly consider adding this. It's just a lot of nice things, and it's also some graveyard hate, which is a really good thing. It's always a good idea to have a little bit of graveyard hate lying around, so just for the sake of, like, evening out this curve a bit. We're at 100 cards right now. We could probably just drop a land or something like that. We'll figure out something along the way to cut. There's some other things I wanted to look at with this deck too that we haven't covered yet. One, you have some options. Like, if you want other ways to generate value in a deck like this, you can do something like Sunbird's Invocation. Mirror March is really cool for like extra value, getting more things that attack. I see the Lurking Predators in the deck. This fits right in with exactly what these things are doing. You do have to be careful. You don't want to add too many 6-drops to the deck. The other thing that, and I think this was a big problem in the game, is that we're a little bit light on reanimation. We got to get some reanimation somewhere. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Just depends on which one you like the best. You know, I think a new one that's interesting is Drawn of the Last Blood Chief. You don't necessarily need to reanimate from your graveyard. You can certainly do it from your opponent's graveyards as well. So that's something to look at. Ink Eyes is a card that doesn't get enough love anymore, but I think fits right into this deck. Shieldred is a classic. You've got room at 7 CMC, so I'd probably go for Shieldred, honestly. And it's just a good card. But these are also interesting options as well. Just for the sake of mana curve, I'm going to go for Shieldred right here. And you could also go spell-based on the reanimation as well. If you like a Rise of the Dark Realms, I like Rise of the Dark Realms. But some people prefer Living Death for the kind of removal aspect of it and the much more efficient mana cost. So I'd probably look at one of those two as well. One other thing I would do ramp-wise in this deck, I would add a Wild Growth. We have a pretty good number of like 3-drops and 4-drops, and Wild Growth on turn 1 will get you into your 3-drops really quickly, and that's a nice thing. I do think we were like slightly ramp light also. I did recall that. Let's see what the ramp looks like right now after we've made a bunch of changes. I know we added some creatures, that'll help. Okay, with the new creatures and the Wild Growth, we're up to 12 pieces of ramp. I feel much better about that. That will also help your deck a lot. We're back at 103. We got to cut some stuff. What are we getting rid of? Probably could drop another 5-drop. Have gotten a little bit 5-drop heavy. I'm going to go, you know, you should add a reanimation spell, but I'm going to cut this Living Death just to get down to 100 here. Could probably cut a 6-drop. I really like it as a card, but I'm going to get rid of this God Eternal Oketra. Thins up the 5-drop, keeps us from getting like too clunky, because we've still got 8 6-drops also, which might be one too many, honestly. And that will depend on your ramp. If you ramp a little bit, it won't feel too bad, but if you get caught without ramp, then it might feel a little clunky. I think we can cut a basic. I'm going to cut a Swamp. There really aren't that many black cards in the deck. Puts us down to 36, 12 ramp, so we've gone up in ramp, but we cut a land. And we need to make one final cut. Would love it to be a 6-drop. Would, like, taper off this curve really nice, but oh, there's so much power at 6 CMC. Just hard to get rid of that stuff. Okay, maybe we'll go down the Galta. I really like Galta. Definitely think about Galta, but we need to get to 100. So there we are. So we've done a couple things. We've increased the creature count a little bit. We've gone up to 28 from 25. And that may seem like a small change, but that stuff can matter. We've also changed some of the creatures just to make sure that the creatures we have are really effective. We have increased the ramp by 3 or 4 cards, which will also help, especially in getting to the bigger stuff. We did add a couple things that can be threatening early. We've added this Managorge or Hydra. Forgotten Ancient can get out of hand pretty early as well. You know, if you want to really ramp up the, like, let's be aggressive early plan, bring in Taurine Mauler. There's the new one coming out in Commander Legends that gets power equal to the number of lands your opponents control, which will, like, that will feel really aggressive. So there's certainly some things like that that you can do. I brought in Sarah Ascendant for whatever card didn't import into Magic Online. That is, like, the best early game aggressive creature. You can even bring in, like, a Scoop Mob in this deck. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 5 or more lands, put 4 counters on it. Couple turns, it gets huge. Now your opponents have to deal with it. You will want some trample, though. But we've also added some stuff, like we added just a little bit of reanimation with Shieldred. Definitely take a look at Living Death or Rise of the Dark Realms. Any of the black reanimate type cards going to be good. You could even just go with an Animate Dead. Marog can do some serious heavy lifting in that it is extra combats, but it also pumps the team, and I like that a lot. Adriana didn't quite make it, but definitely worth considering. Gahiji didn't make it, but also worth considering. You know, these things that are just going to, like, pump your team up a little bit while doing other good stuff. Definitely strong considerations. So yeah, those are the changes that I would make to the deck. I didn't get Rishkar's expertise in. I would probably look at getting that in somewhere too. You could potentially slot it over this Beast Whisperer. Beast Whisperer, another card that has a habit of not surviving the way you want it to. You could certainly keep this. I'll just do this right now, but we'll add Rishkar's in. On average, I find I get maybe like 2 to 3 cards out of Beast Whisperer, unless it shows up like later in the game when people are out of removal. Rishkar's expertise usually gets you a whole bunch of cards, so... Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this wrap-up. Hope you enjoyed taking a look at this Saskia deck. And as always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching. I want to thank my awesome Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. If you want to help support the channel and vote on which decks I play next, feel free to check out my Patreon at the link below.